As I have discussed in my previous lectures, the klystron amplifier and klystron oscillators, which fell in the category of linear beam tubes, here I am going to discuss another way to design the microwave oscillators, which is based on magnetrons, and these magnetrons fall under the category of cross-field tube, which is also called M types. All those devices fall under the category of cross-field tubes follow a basic fundamental principle. Therefore, the first principle I am going to discuss, the first basic principle of those cross-field tubes will be discussed, and then the magnetron oscillator, which is based on the cylindrical magnetrons, will be discussed as a special case of the cross-field tubes. This table includes all devices fall under the category of cross-field tube, and you can see from here that the major categories are resonant, non-resonant, and Measure effect. So out of these three categories, in this lecture I am going to discuss only the resonant type cross-field tube, which is called the magnetron. In the case of linear beam tube, as we have seen, the electric field or the steady electric field was applied to produce the electron beam, from where the energy transferred to the microwave field, and during that time the steady magnetic field was used to keep those electron beam focused to a particular path, so that the devounced electron cannot be scattered out. There, the electric field and the magnetic field was applied parallel to each other in order to achieve that goal I just discussed. But in the case of cross-field tube, that electric field and magnetic field are applied perpendicular to each other in order to achieve the cycloidal motion of the electron. You should remember the cycloidal motion that already I have discussed in this course, earlier in my lecture in this course. In the case of cycloidal motion, the electrons are accelerated by the application of the electric field, whereas those electrons are bent due to the application of the magnetic field. For your better understanding of the cycloidal motion, I am giving here a brief description of the cycloidal motion under the application of electric and magnetic field. As you can see, the electric field that is applied along the vertical direction, and the magnetic field is applied perpendicular to the electric field along the horizontal direction, and I am considering that this direction is the direction perpendicular to the plane containing electric field and magnetic field. Now consider a positive charge which is initially at rest at the origin, and from the Lorentz force equation we know the force applied over a moving particle which is carrying a charge of quantity q is equals to this electric field plus the cross product of the velocity and the applied magnetic field. So this is the Lorentz force. Here the first one is due to the electric field and the second one is due to the magnetic field. Now since the particle is at rest initially at the origin, you can see over here, so the velocity is 0, so therefore the magnetic field does no work on the particle. It is only the electric field that applies the force on this particle, and due to application of this force the particle gets accelerated along the vertical direction. So as the particle is being accelerated along the vertical direction, so there appear a non-zero velocity in the equation of the Lorentz force. So right now the velocity is not equal to 0 because due to the application of the electric field the particle gets accelerated along the vertical direction. Once velocity becomes non-zero, or the particles gets accelerated with the non-zero velocity, then the force due to the magnetic field gets applied to the particle. The force due to the magnetic field is expressed by the cross product of its velocity and the applied magnetic field. Therefore, the direction of the force is perpendicular to the plane containing both of these vector velocity and the magnetic field. Now from this expression or from this figure, the magnetic field here I have represented the magnetic field by H, because we know that B is equals to mu times H. So therefore I have replaced this B by H over here. Now the magnetic field, the direction of the magnetic field is along this direction, whereas the direction of the velocity is along the vertical direction. So obviously the force which will be applied to the particle due to the cross product of the velocity and the magnetic field should be along this direction. So therefore, due to the influence of the force caused by the magnetic field, while the particle gets accelerated along the vertical direction, the particles simultaneously will bend along this direction. That is due to the application of the force. And as the particle gets accelerated more and more along the vertical direction, the more force due to the magnetic field also will be applied over the particle, and due to the application of the magnetic field, the particle bends more along the perpendicular direction. So in this way the particle gets bent around and finally it travels in the opposite direction to the direction of the electric field. And when the direction of the particle gets reversed, then the force due to the electric field appears opposite to the direction of the motion of the particle. As a result, the particle gets decelerated in this direction and finally it will reach at a particular position when its velocity will be 0 again. And at this position the particle will come at rest and the situation will be exactly equals to the initial situation from where the particle started its journey. At this condition, since the velocity is again 0, so the force due to the magnetic field will be 0 again, and since the force due to the magnetic field is 0 and the velocity is also 0, the force due to the electric field will again start to work, and due to the electric field the particle will again start to move along the vertical direction, and as it will move the magnetic field will also start to work, and due to the influence of the magnetic field it will bend again, and finally it will follow its previous characteristics of motion and it will come at 0 velocity after a while, and from here it will again start to be accelerated and finally it will follow the similar type of path again and again, and in this way the particle defines the cycloidal motion. However, based on these basic principles of the cycloidal motion, the magnetron oscillators and magnetron amplifiers are designed, but when it will be an amplifier and when it will be an oscillator, that depends. Basically, as we know, in order to design an oscillator we should provide a feedback which takes the path of integer multiple of the 2 pi. So therefore, when the particle, which is in the case of magnetron are electrons, get back to the cathode from where the electrons are generated, and they traverse a path of integer multiple of 2 pi, then obviously that device generates an oscillation. On the other hand, a magnetron amplifier can be designed if you can make the arrangement in such a way that instead of being traveled back to the initial position, which is the cathode from where the electrons are generated, the electron beam which are under the cycloidal motion is transferring some of its energy into some weak microwave field, and due to the transfer of the energy, the acceleration or the velocity gets reduced of those electrons, and due to the reduction of the velocity, the force of the magnetic field also gets reduced. So therefore, by the application of the magnetic field, the electrons which are supposed to get back to the initial position, which is the cathode, they rather reach the anode and get collected from the positive terminal of the applied voltage source. So in summary, if you can make an arrangement so that the electron beam after being generated from the cathode follow a cycloidal path and get back to the cathode again by traversing a path which is equivalent to the integer multiple of 2 pi equivalent phase, then it produces oscillation. On the other hand, if you uh, make the arrangement in such a way that those electron beam which are under the cycloidal motion can transfer some of its energy into some weak microwave field, and thereby rather than being get back to the cathode it reaches the anode, then the magnetron amplifiers are designed. Three basic types of magnetrons that I have listed over here, that is the split anode magnetron, next one is the cyclotron frequency magnetron, and the last one that I will discuss in this lecture, that is the traveling wave magnetron. And these traveling wave magnetrons are either called traveling wave magnetrons or simple magnetron. The schematic of the traveling wave magnetron, which is also called the cylindrical magnetron, is presented in this slide. You can see that the voltage source, the DC voltage source V0 is applied to the cathode with respect to anode, where the positive terminal is connected with the anode and the negative terminal is connected with the cathode. So therefore, the electric field should be directed from the anode towards the cathode, but according to this diagram, this electric field ER stands for the electric field along the direction of the radius of the system. So this electric field is just shown along the opposite direction. So therefore, we have to consider in our calculation this electric field is -1. The magnetic field, as I told, should be perpendicular to the electric field. So that is why this magnetic field is considered as shown in this diagram along the downward direction, which is obviously perpendicular to the direction of the electric field, because the direction of the electric field is along the radius of the system or of the cylinder, and the direction of the magnetic field is perpendicular to that. There you can see that there exist several cavities. These are called the Renset cavities, because you will see from this diagram or from this schematic, which is a simpler representation of the system. So this one is the cathode and the outer boundary represents the anode, and the electric field is applied from the anode to the cathode. So therefore, the electron start to emit from the cathode and it moves towards the anode. But due to presence of this magnetic field which is directing into the page, which is corresponding to the direction, the downward direction as shown in this schematic. The electron bends towards the cathode, and finally they return back to the cathode. Now this starting from its initial journey, the electrons are coming back to the cathode within one cavity. So if you increase number of cavities, such kind of movement you can increase, as shown over here. So this kind of bending is done within one cavity. So this comprises one cavity, this comprises another cavity, this one another, and this one also another. So these are called Renset cavities. Let's see what should be the equations for the electron motion. Now, as the electrons are being accelerated, so therefore the fundamental equation that we should follow is this one here. This represents the acceleration of the electron, and this is the applied force, and this is the mass of the electron. Now, since both the electric and magnetic field exist, so therefore the force can be think of the Lorentz force over here, and the acceleration can be represented as shown in this expression. So before describing or discussing the equation on the left hand side of this equation, let's discuss this one. So this is, you can easily identify, this is the Lorentz force, where this E represents the charge of the electron, but since the direction of the electric field is opposite to the conventional direction, so the negative charge cancels the negative direction of the electric field. So that is why the positive sign is appearing before the electric field, but the negative sign is appearing before the magnetic field, because we know V cross B, this is a cross product. Velocity is represented along the uh, curved direction. We know the velocity, the angular velocity is represented as d phi dt, but the linear velocity is differentiation with respect to r d phi dt. So here I am considering that the electrons are traveling with a constant radius r and they are changing its direction. So therefore I am taking out this r from this differentiation. So d phi dt, which is the angular velocity that is appearing in this expression along with this bz is basically b naught. Here I have assumed that beta b naught is the magnetic field, magnitude of the magnetic field along the direction of z direction, positive z direction. So this vertical direction is representing the positive z direction. So that is why bz is appearing over here. Practically the value of bz is equals to b naught. If you consider this direction is the negative z directions, obviously there should be a plus sign. Now come to the left hand side, the equation on the left hand side. Here this equation or this expression is for the total acceleration. This expression is for force. E times this factor represents force divided by the mass, and therefore the expression on the left hand side represents the total acceleration. The acceleration, since the electrons are traveling in a curved path, or rather I can say the electrons are being accelerated along a curved path, so the accelerations can be represented in terms of the acceleration along the radial direction, because as the electrons are traveling until they are not reaching their final radius, so they are traveling towards the radial direction. So therefore the change in position along the radial direction with respect to time defines their velocity, and further derivative represents the acceleration. But as they are traveling along the radial direction, they are changing their direction. So the change in direction with respect to time is also be represented as a acceleration, because from this expression we can easily identify this is the expression for linear acceleration, and this one is the expression for the angular acceleration, because we know the relation between the linear velocity with the angular velocity can be represented as this r times d phi dt. Now the acceleration can be represented as v square divided by r. So therefore finally you can write that r d phi dt whole square. So from here you can write t square, and this acceleration is I can denote it as angular acceleration. So therefore you can easily identify that this factor or this acceleration basically is representing the acceleration due to a change in direction while the electrons are moving in a curved path. So this is the acceleration when they are traveling along the radial direction, and this is the acceleration when they are traveling along the curved path. So therefore this is the total acceleration caused by the total force being applied, and this is the total force means the electric field, and along with it with the electric field there exists the magnetic field. And in this case the velocity which is associated with the magnetic field is the angular velocity, which is also associated with the curved path. So this one is the first equation, and the second equation should be this one. Here you can see, or you can easily identify that the magnetic field is associated with the linear velocity dr dt, because the velocity has two components, one along the radial direction while along the curved direction. So the velocity along the curved direction is associated with the first equation, and the velocity along the linear direction is associated with the second equation. So this is also the this part v cross b, but this equation is defining the angular momentum, change in angular momentum. This expression is the equation for the change in angular momentum, because r square d phi dt is the angular momentum, and this derivative, time derivative of this angular momentum, represents the change in angular momentum. Or in other words, you can say that this is the acceleration only along the curved direction, and which is caused only due to the magnetic field, because in my previous slide during the discussion of cyclotron motion, I have discussed that initially the uh, charge or any particle gets accelerated due to presence of this electric field, but the bend of those charge particles take place due to presence of the magnetic field. You can relate such situation with a projectile motion. Now suppose you are standing on a high-rise building and you are throwing a stone parallel to the surface of the earth. So the applied force minus the gravitational force will be the force that you are applying to throw the stone, and when the stone is released from your hand, then it starts to bend, and that bend is caused only by the gravitational force, which is here is equivalent to the magnetic force. And due to the bend, the particle or the stone gets decelerated. So in this case, since the electrons are, or the particle which are being bent over here, or they are changing their angular momentum only due to the magnetic field. Initially they have started their journey by the application of the electric field as well as magnetic field, because whenever the electric field accelerates the charged particle, the magnetic field started to work, and when the magnetic field started to work, the bending of those particles takes place due to the magnetic field only. So therefore the change in momentum of those electrons are taking place due to the magnetic field only. So therefore this equation is representing that factor, that the change in momentum is being caused only due to magnetic field. So first equation, the initial acceleration, this is the linear acceleration along with the change in direction with respect to time, that is also caused the acceleration, the total acceleration, which is equivalent to the change in position along the radial direction associated with the change in direction with respect to time caused by the total applied force due to the electric field as well as the magnetic field. And in this case, the magnetic field is considering the velocity along the curved direction, that is the phi direction, whereas in the second equation, the bend of this charged particle, which is actually the electrons, is caused due to the magnetic field only. And in this case, the velocity which is associated with the magnetic field is along the linear direction, and this force actually being applied to change the momentum of the charged particles or the electron. And finally, the electron charge to mass ratio, which is a known factor, is this one, which will be used to calculate these expressions. So this one is the first equation that I have obtained. This one is the second equation that I have obtained in my previous slide. Now I am doing a simple rearrangement over here. I am multiplying this r from the left hand side of this equation over the right hand side of the equation, and I am obtaining this one. And here I define this omega c, which is equals to this E divided by m times the magnetic field. So finally I'm obtaining this expression, and from here I'm integrating over here. So integration gives me this r square d phi dt is equals to half times omega c times r square plus a constant. So this constant is coming due to the integration, and which we can easily find out by the boundary condition. And the boundary condition is that when r is equals to a, and a is the radius of the cathode cylinder, as you have seen when I have described this system over here, you can see from this picture or from this figure that this A actually defines the cathode cylinder from where the electrons are generated and travels towards the anode. So therefore, when this R is equals to A, that means electrons are just at their origin from where they are being generated. So at that position, d phi dt must be 0. So if you replace r over here, d phi dt will be 0, which is the boundary condition. And finally, from this expression, we can obtain the value of the constant is this one. So half into omega c times a square divided by r square. We can easily obtain from the boundary condition, and that I have applied to get the final expression of that. Now, in the case of cyclotron motion, we know the work that is being done is only due to the electric field, not by the magnetic field, because the magnetic field is perpendicular to the motion of the particle, and therefore the magnetic field does no work. Since the electric field do the work, so we can relate the total kinetic energy that is being gained by the electrons due to the application of the potential energy in terms of the voltage V. So here E gets multiplied to get the electron volt. So this is the potential energy that is being converted into the kinetic energy. We have seen in my earlier slide that the electron velocity has two components when it is in circular motion. One is the linear component along the radial direction, and another one is along the curved direction. And therefore, from this expression, if you divide this m and multiply these two, so you will get the velocity square, which is related with the applied potential V. Now, since this velocity has two components along the radial direction and the curved direction, so these two components can be represented in differential form as shown over here. So this is the radial direction, so change in position along the radial direction with respect to time, and change in position along the curved direction. So along the change in position along the curved direction is r times phi. Since the radius is constant, because the change in direction takes place for a constant radius, so here by considering r is constant, r times d phi dt will represents the velocity along the phi direction. And actually this is the relation between the linear velocity and angular velocity. This is the if we consider it is the linear velocity associated with the angular velocity. This is a standard equation already I have derived in my previous slide. So therefore, from this expression, if you apply the another boundary condition that r equals to b, where b is the radius from the center of the cathode, because again if I refer the same diagram over here, you can see the b is the radius from the center of the cathode to the edge of the anode. So this is the center of the cathode to the edge of the anode. Edge of the anode means since the rendered cavities are connected with the anode, so the edge of the anode is this one as shown in this diagram. However, so therefore, if r equals to b, then dr dt should be 0, because this dr dt we have Since the dr dt means the velocity, change in velocity along the radial direction, and since we are interested in the curved path, and we are considering the electrons are not reaching the anode and they are returning back to the cathode, so when r is equals to b, I am considering, so at that point of position, or that position, dr dt's velocity should be 0, and that is why they cannot reach the anode, rather than they are being curved and returning back to the cathode. So the potential that is being applied, which is v naught, and at that radius, that value of the radius, just dr dt will be 0. So if you apply this r, b, r equals to b over here, you must have to consider this dr dt is equals to 0. Along with that, this potential will be equals to v naught. So from this equation, this part is equals to 0, and you are getting another equation of this d phi dt. Already the first equation of the d phi dt I have obtained in my previous slide, and here I am getting the second equation of the d phi dt, which is associated with the applied potential v naught. So this is the first equation that relates this d phi dt with this omega c, and omega c includes the electron charge to mass ratio and the applied magnetic field. And this is the second equation that I have obtained by replacing r equals to b, and that relates directly the applied potential v naught with the d phi dt. So now from these two expression, if you substitute this d phi dt, you can get this expression finally over here. And this expression is an important one because it states that the minimum magnetic field that you must have to apply in order to achieve the cyclotron motion when you have applied the known value of the potential. So this is called the Hall cutoff magnetic equation, where this is the cutoff magnetic field that you must have to apply in order to achieve the magnetron operation or the cyclotron motion of the electron within these rendered cavities when V naught is known. On the other hand, the same equation also defines the minimum DC voltage that you have to apply when you know the magnetic field. So for a known value of magnetic field, this is the minimum DC voltage you should apply in order to achieve, or in order to get the cyclotron motion, or to make this magnetron operational. And this DC voltage is called the Hall cutoff voltage equation, or this equation is called the Hall cutoff voltage equation, where this DC voltage is called the Hall cutoff voltage. Next is the cyclotron angular frequency, and which is followed by a known step, because here I need to equate the centrifugal force with the balancing force, which is due to the magnetic field and the total velocity v. So this is centrifugal force mv square by divided by r, because the capital R, whereas the radius of the cycloidal path when the electrons are moving, they are describing the circular path, and the radius of the circular path here I am assuming that is capital R. So mv square divided by r represents the centrifugal force, whereas that centrifugal force is being balanced by the magnetic field associated with the velocity. So from here, the omega c already I have defined as this one, the electron charge to mass ratio times the magnetic field. So from this expression, after a little rearrangement, you can see the little rearrangement over here. Finally, the time period we can easily calculate as 2 pi over this omega, and this omega is nothing but this omega c. It should be a c should appear over here. Now if you replace this omega c, the expression of the omega c, by this E times B divided by M, so the final expression of the time period can be represented as shown in this expression. Now in order to design a magnetron oscillator, we know that the time period by which the electrons are returning back to the cathode must be integer multiple of 2 pi. So as I told, the returning path, that means the total path, should be integer multiple of 2 pi n as shown over here. But since there exist n rented cavities, so the phase shift between two adjacent cavities should be 2 pi n. In n, this n, the small n stands for the integer, and this capital N stands for the n rented cavities. So the phase shift between two adjacent cavities can be represented as this one. So when you will add up the all phase shift for all the rented cavities, then they will give you the integer multiple of 2 pi. The magnetron oscillators ordinarily work in pi mode, which means that the phi n is equals to pi. You can see from this diagram that the excitations remain largely within one cavity, whereas they are altering their phase. So you can easily identify that phase within one cavity. They are within the pi phase. In another cavity, they are altering their phase and appearing another phi phase within the adjacent cavities. So that is why it is called the pi mode. Magnetrons oscillators are generally work for the pi mode. Looking at the nature of the successive rise and fall of the fields within the cavity, you can consider that the fields are actually in the form of traveling wave, where the phase velocity of the traveling wave is corresponding to the rotational velocity of the electrons. Now, in this case, I have demonstrated the way to design the magnetron oscillator, but if you want to design the magnetron amplifier, then the energy from the moving electron must be transferred into the traveling field during the returning phase of the field, because in all of my previous discussion regarding the klystron, reflex klystron, we have seen the during the returning field, the moving electron transfers most of the maximum of their energy into the traveling field. And if the length between separation between the two cavities can be represented as this L, the phase constant can be written in the form of this 2 pi small n divided by n times L, where without this L, this expression, that is 2 pi small n divided by n, represents the phase within each cavity. So, and since, as I told, that the phase velocity of the traveling wave is actually equivalent to the average rotational velocity of the electron, you can see, then the phase constant can also be related in a similar way by dividing this entire phase by the separation of the cavity, the separation length of the cavity.